So let's be honest. Most fearful avoidant attachment styles spend their entire early life and even into their later lives trying to meet everybody else's needs just for them to actually feel safe. Not, in fact, realizing that within that or underneath that, they actually have their own set of needs buried beneath that fear. Fearful avoidants are tough. And they would probably listening to this, if you're listening to this as a fearful avoidant and somebody says, oh, fear. Fear may not even be an emotion you particularly identify with. But if I were to ask you, what are you afraid will happen if you stop meeting other people's needs and just show up and express your own and get much better at receiving, then you might in fact recognize that, wait, I'm actually afraid that if I'm not meeting everybody's needs, I'm going to be seen as unworthy, or I won't be loved or accepted, or maybe I'll be rejected by other people in my life or seen as not good enough. And generally underneath that overcompensation, there is in fact a fear. So in today's video, in the next 7 minutes or so, you are going to learn exactly what your true needs are buried underneath that fear. And we're also going to talk about why you do these things and what you can actually start doing to change so that you do not end up going through life feeling like you are constantly in one-way relationships where you show up and you put all this pressure on yourself to be as perfect as possible in those relationships, only leaving yourself feeling emotionally starved. Let's talk about the 5 most important needs as a whole, but I want to sort of weave in some other information in between, okay? So we know fearful avoidant attachment styles, because of how they grow up, they basically learn to suppress their needs and to basically do or be whatever needs to happen in order to adapt to their environment. So for example, if you grew up in a household where there was a lot of chaos and maybe you constantly felt like you were a pawn between your two parents, perhaps during a bad divorce or a lot of escalations of fights and arguments that scared you, you may grow up in that dynamic feeling like, okay, well, I just have to be whatever they each need from me so that I can feel safe in this environment. Like the last thing we need is more fighting, more arguments. Maybe you end up feeling like, okay, both parents are kind of using you for information about each other. And so you put that information forward in the best way that you can, trying to respect the other person. Or maybe you grew up in an environment where there's an alcoholic or somebody in active addiction that you're around, and you just need to be the person who grows up fast, and you need to be that child who's strong and tough and takes care of that parent in active addiction at a very young age yourself. There can be a number of different reasons that would cause this. It could be a parent who has narcissistic personality disorder or perhaps has a mood disorder. There could be different dynamics that would essentially make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells and there isn't room for you to exist. And, I just want to ask you that question I asked you earlier because it's going to help you identify your core fear. So I want you to really sit with it and think about it. If I stop giving so much, trying so hard, overcompensating, being so generous, being so, mindful and thoughtful about how I show up emotionally, like if I'm not trying to put pressure on myself to operate 10 out of 10 in all relationships, what am I afraid will happen? And I really want you to think about that. And I'll give you some of the most common answers we have for fearful avoidance. And by the way, you're going to have one of these common answers, but it can be slightly different for each fearful avoidance. So you might, number one, be like, oh, I'm actually going to be unsafe. Like if I am not showing up, then I'm going to be punished and I'm going to be unsafe. And that could be because you're in a really unhealthy relationship right now. And that could be because you grew up in environments that were very unhealthy. And so that was what you knew. Okay. It could also be, oh, people are going to think I'm a bad person. And you're essentially overcompensating because you're trying to run from guilt and shame. Another one could be, oh, I'm going to literally be seen as not good enough and not worthy. And then nobody's going to want me. I'm going to be unlovable and then abandoned and alone. You might even be like, oh, somebody's eventually just going to not be interested in me and then they'll betray me. One other really honorable mention here, by the way, we don't talk about enough for how big of a deal it is for fearful avoidance is, oh, I am going to have to rely on other people. And I'm so scared of relying on other people because I can't trust that they're going to show up and I'm just going to be left feeling helpless. And there can be this deep need to deviate from relying on people, being vulnerable to people, needing anybody. Because if as a child you needed people and instead it was just chaos, you're like, I don't want to need people. I don't want to need people and then be sucked into other people's chaos and have no ability to do anything about it. So these are some of the most common answers, okay? And that's really point number 1 is to really just dive in and see what that is. But I'm going to take you through the 5 most common needs now, okay? So just to be super clear here, you're trying to identify what your fears are, but then Once you can actually identify those fears and separate them out, then you can see your needs a little more clearly. Okay, so here are the top 5 needs fearful avoidants really have. Number 1, they need to feel like they can trust in a relationship. Fearful avoidants usually go into relationships and they vet for connection and chemistry and novelty and passion and excitement. And they want to see, do we get along like a house on fire? Like that's such an important thing for a fearful avoidant. But I promise you, if you're a fearful avoidant and trust is not a stable cornerstone of your relationship, you're going to see that you'll sabotage. At some point in time, you're going to push that person away if you don't feel like there's really strong trust. Now, to kind of go into like point 1, A, B, C, D, or like of your 5 needs here, need 1, I just want to let you know that the best ways to really build trust in your relationships are through consistency. So making sure you communicate consistently, making sure that you check in consistently with each other about your feelings and needs, have a little bit of that vulnerability there consistently, and see each other consistently in a relationship. But the other really big pillars that bleed into or really build trust are congruency. You want to make sure that when you're dating somebody or vetting to see what they say and what they do line up. Like if you see somebody being incongruent, fearful avoidants are like human lie detectors. If you see somebody saying one thing one day and doing something another, that will not sit with you. And as much as you would like to try to let it go, that is going to eat away at you until you have understanding for why. And that brings me to point number 3 is context. You will do really well to ask for and advocate for context and transparency in your closest relationships. And this does not mean like asking somebody all the time, everywhere they go, like, where are you? Who are you with? Like, it doesn't have to be this controlling thing. But if somebody, for example, cancels plans and they're like, hey, I am not coming tonight. Sorry, see you another time. And you're dating them. And maybe you're dating them for like 4 or 5 months. You don't want to be like, okay, cool, and never ask. Like if it doesn't sit right with you, you have to say, hey, no worries. I hope everything's okay. When we get a chance to talk next, can you just share some context with me about what came up so I can better understand? You need to be able to advocate for those things in your relationship, because if you don't advocate for context, your mind will fill in the blanks, and your mind will fill in the blanks with all of its conditioning about all the things you went through growing up. So if you had a parent who was an alcoholic or an addict, then you couldn't trust them. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, like maybe the person's using, or maybe the person is, out partying, and your mind's going to essentially jump to conclusions. It's going to, maybe you're going to fear cheating, or maybe you're going to fear being lied to, but you have to be able to ask for that context and transparency. Okay. So that's all under need number 1 is just trust, but that really is built on consistency, congruency, context. And the other big one I didn't say yet was consideration. So feeling like somebody's considerate of your feelings, and you really want, if you're thinking of truly being in a relationship, and maybe you're in a place where you're just looking to date and get to know people, but if you're truly wanting to be in a relationship, you need to be looking for consideration. Like you should vet for that early on. Is somebody considerate of my feelings? Do they take me into consideration? Are they mindful about my boundaries? Do they listen to me and hear me out on things? Like if you don't have trust with those cornerstones beneath it, it's going to be really hard. Okay. So need number 2, you do need a sense of passion, novelty, excitement. I'm going to just group those needs together because those are those kind of like exploratory needs. Fearful avoidants like the spice of things. They do not like to sit still, be too far into their routine, constantly have the same day where they get up at a certain time, come back from work, cook dinner, clean up, go to sleep, repeat. Like that monotony of the same thing over and over again, it's not going to be a fearful avoidant thing. They're not going to like it. And so fearful avoidants like to be challenged a little bit, but they like the novelty. They want to try new things. Now, if you are doing new things 24/7 and the novelty is at the expense of stability or security, that will actually cause you to sabotage eventually as well. So you don't want to be like only novelty seeking all the time. You might think that you want that if you're in that space of life where you're like doing that right now, but you're actually going to be best off as a person in your own healing journey to have a sense of rootedness, a sense of I have a strong, solid foundation I spring from into my novelty, into my exploration, into the passionate part of my life where I'm passionate about these topics or hobbies. But I know that I have a safe space to come back to, a sense of rootedness and stability somewhere. And if you haven't already as a person, I very much recommend for you to really look at what brings stability in your life and for you to evaluate this, because when novelty feels like it's almost mutually exclusive to stability, when the scales are too imbalanced, you're going to feel like your nervous system is in chaos all the time. You're going to feel like you are in a place where you just don't have a sense of like inner peace. You're going to be in fight or flight mode a lot. And it's actually really important to have a sense of rootedness. So I would make a list of like what brings me safety and stability. And I would actually go through the 7 areas of life. So look at your career area of life, financial area of life, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and relationships. And, for example, maybe the stability is that you have a couple close friends you really trust, brings you stability in the friendship area of life or relationship area of life. Maybe in the career area of life. Maybe you like to work for yourself, for example, but maybe you know that as a fallback plan, you can be a contractor for the same couple of people you've worked for in the past, and you have that in the back of your mind, or you have like a plan B to fall back on. So then you have this sense of security that you can spring off from, but you have a good sense of, at worst, I can do this. And that will really anchor you in ways that you probably don't consciously realize right now. And in the financial area of life, maybe there's a sense of stability knowing that you're putting $30 away a week. And I know that maybe that's not possible for everybody right now, but just having something where like, hey, I'm putting a little bit of money towards an emergency fund or some degree of like savings for an emergency, or maybe investing. So just having something that, even if it's like, it doesn't have to be this huge thing where you get this huge bonus at your work and you put it all into investments all the time, but just something where you're able to sit down and be like, I feel a sense of security that I have this plan here. And the more you have a little bit of stability and trust, it will make you able to enjoy the novelty and the passion and the excitement and exploratory parts of life, where you can go on a road trip or try something new or take up a new hobby or meet new people, but feel like there is a sense of rootedness within that. Do that from a sense of safety. It doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, doing these things all the time burns me out or compromises me. Okay. So really important for fearful avoidance. Now, other really big needs that fearful avoidants have are for emotional depth and connection. Okay. So fearful avoidants do not do well with superficial conversation. If you're a fearful avoidant, you know what I'm talking about. I don't even have to go into this. Just probably small talk makes you want to pull out your hair. So, being able to have depth intentionally in your life, surround yourself with people who can have meaningful conversations with you, people who can challenge you in that way, can be a really powerful thing. And before I get to the last one, I actually just want to say, if you want to dive in and actually take our whole needs course, because of course you have more than 5 needs, but these are usually the very common ones for fearful avoidance that appear near the top. And also I wanted to highlight the ones that sometimes fearful avoidants don't realize are important, like trust and stability, and sometimes get put on the back burner only to kind of blow up later. And you often don't realize why. But anyways, if you want to go really in depth into your needs and how your needs impact your nervous system and your subconscious functioning and just how to rewire those things, all at the subconscious level so it sticks, leveraging neuroscience, you can actually click the link down below, and we're doing a spin to win. So you can win like a free month to the personal development school. You can win a free week to PDS. You can win a free 2 weeks to PDS. And it actually allows you to access all of the courses, all the materials. And I would just recommend, if you go in there, highlight the needs course, go into the needs course. You can download it. You can get the workbook in there. And we have attachment style healing courses you can check out in there. So it's all completely free, but you can win your version of it down below. So I will put that link down below in the chat. Now, before I get into that last need as well, I also just want to add to like that emotional depth piece in terms of conversation. It's also like your side of that. So you don't often realize, but you need to receive emotional depth from people as well, and be able to give it. So it's not just about drawing information about somebody else and understanding them and like feeling this depth of connection to them. It's about you being able to be vulnerable with somebody so that somebody's receiving your depth as well. And in that vulnerability, being able to feel seen and heard and known by somebody, like understood by somebody and known. And if you are able to do that, that is going to be one of the like most important pieces of glue that connects you to somebody in a relationship. The more you can share your own true inner self and inner world and feel seen and known in that, it's going to be a really healing experience for you as well, because usually you grew up where you couldn't exist, your needs couldn't exist because there was so much going on around you. Okay. And so need number 5 that is also really important is to have a sense of growth. Fearful avoidants need to feel like they are growing or expanding in some kind of way. And honestly, you probably don't realize this sometimes. If you're new or fresh to your healing journey, and I'll show you where it shows up. You might be like, oh, every time I have a phone call with somebody I'm dating, it has to be the best phone call ever. Every time I go on a date with somebody, it has to be the best date ever. Every time I hang out with an old friend, it has to be the most fun ever. What that is you putting pressure on yourself to always see progress. And progress is rooted in the need for growth. And you also generally tend to need like your freedom, autonomy, independence, as well as that depth of connection. But those are kind of like honorable mention needs further down the totem pole. But truly, there will be this sense of like, You need to feel like there's progress happening in every aspect of your life. And when there's not, you may feel like you're sabotaging. If you don't feel like your relationship is constantly progressing or getting better and better all the time, you will automatically jump to the conclusion that it's shrinking, everything's going away, everything's going to be really bad and hard, and oh my gosh. And that could trigger a flight response in you where you then like feel hurt by that, push everything down, cut somebody off or cut the relationship off to protect yourself. And that is honestly a form of self-sabotage. I hope that makes sense. Those are your needs. If you want to get that spin to win promotion, you can win a free membership, a free month, a free course for life. You can check that link out down below. But that is it for today. I hope this is helpful for you. And let me know what needs you saw come up the most for you or what resonated the most strongly in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I hope you like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed today's video. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you next time.